20% of the world's oil moves through a waterway 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran and Oman. On a map, it looks like nothing, a thin blue gap between two pieces of land. But roughly 20 million barrels of oil pass through it every single day. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, their exports have no other route. Close that strait, and a third of the world's seaborne oil stops moving. In early 2026, that is exactly what happened. Iran closed the strait, oil markets seized. Brent crude crossed $116 a barrel within days. Shipping insurance rates spiked. Supply chains that had spent years recovering from prior shocks began to buckle again. Now here is the part nobody covered. Within 72 hours of the strait closure, the G7 issued a joint statement committing to all necessary measures to stabilize energy markets. The IEA released 400 million barrels from strategic reserves. Central banks signaled readiness to act. The Federal Reserve indicated it would not raise rates despite rising inflation. Every single one of those responses means the same thing: more money, faster. The mechanism is always identical. A geopolitical shock creates an economic shock. The economic shock creates political pressure. The political pressure produces monetary response. And the monetary response, every time without exception, means currency debasement. This is not new. It is not a conspiracy. It is the logical output of a system where governments control the money supply and face no hard constraint on how much they can create. In 1973, the Arab oil embargo produced the same sequence. Nixon had already closed the gold window 2 years earlier. With no hard money anchor, the response to the embargo was to print. The result was a decade of stagflation, rising prices, stagnant wages, eroding purchasing power, that took until 1981 and interest rates above 20% to break. The lesson was not learned. In 2008, the financial crisis produced the same sequence: emergency liquidity, quantitative easing, zero interest rates for a decade. The money supply expanded at a rate unprecedented in peacetime. The lesson was not learned. In 2020, a pandemic produced the same sequence. M2 money supply grew by 40% in 18 months, the fastest monetary expansion in American history. The inflation that followed was described as transitory, until it wasn't. The lesson was not learned. Now a war in the Strait of Hormuz produces the same sequence, and the tools are the same. The justifications are the same. The outcome will be the same. Bitcoin rose when the strait closed. The financial press called this a safe haven bid, a flight to hard assets, a geopolitical premium. Those descriptions are technically accurate and completely inadequate. Bitcoin did not rise because traders decided it was a safe haven. Bitcoin rose because some portion of the market understood, viscerally, immediately, that the response to this crisis would follow the same pattern as every prior crisis, and that the pattern ends the same way, with more units of currency chasing the same amount of goods, with the purchasing power of savings quietly transferred to those who received the new money first. Bitcoin has a fixed supply, 21 million. No government can change that number. No emergency resolution. No G7 statement. No central bank press conference. That is not a price argument. That is a physics argument. The people who understand Bitcoin have watched this pattern repeat for 15 years. They do not celebrate when geopolitical crises push the price up. They are not relieved. They are, if anything, grimly unsurprised. Because the Strait of Hormuz crisis is not an argument for Bitcoin. It is an illustration of the argument. The argument was already made. By 2008, by 1971, by every government that has ever faced a crisis with a printing press in reach. The question is not whether the money will be debased. It always is. The question is whether you hold something they cannot debase. If this episode made you think differently, subscribe. New episodes every week. And if you want to go deeper, there's more waiting for you. This is not a channel about price. It's a channel about civilization.